Okay, if you have been anywhere in the area, and particularly if you live up near Fredericksburg, you might have seen this in the paper about mid-March. Does anyone remember the Crabapple Fire or other fires a couple of years ago? Well, we are fortunate tonight to have people who know this well and know fire well. The first one is Abbie, if you are on Zoom there, if you could show yourself on video. I'll give you a quick introduction.
I'm here. Are you able to hear me?
See you. Yes, we could see you and hear you. Go ahead and show yourself again, except I think it's going to pan to me the moment I talk.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Abbie Tijerina. I am the Wildland Urban Interface Coordinator for Texas A&M Forest Service out in Edinburgh.
Okay, well, what I'd like to do is to give you a quick introduction is Abbie Tijerina is coming from the Valley. She's joining us on Zoom tonight. She's the Wildlife Urban Interface Coordinator on the Incident Response Team for Texas A&M Forest Service. She knows fire intimately. She's going to tell you a lot of information about how fire gets started, how you can help. And then we're going to hear from someone who is directly involved with the fire or in the fire, Billy and Patti Ewing, members here. So first I'd like to invite Abbie to talk about fire as she knows it.
Thank you. You want me to go ahead and share my screen now?
Yes. Yes. Go ahead. Go ahead. It's going to hit me the moment I speak. Go ahead.
Okay. Are you all able to see my screen on your end?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Awesome. Great. So again, I'm Abbie Tijerina. I'm the Wildland Urban Interface Coordinator out down from the Valley. So it's a good 5 hours or so drive from where you all at right now. So we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So wildfires are a natural process. I like to show off this fire triangle. Basically, this is what is needed for a wildfire to occur. You need fuel, oxygen. Our atmosphere is 21% oxygen, so that's already pretty much always there. And then an ignition source or heat. So naturally, that's lightning, volcanoes, rock slide, anything that causes a spark. And then as humans have gone out of the urban areas into the wildland areas, we are adding more fuels and more ignition sources to these processes. So I know you all cover about 10 counties in your chapter. So most of them, pretty much all of them, are in the Edwards Plateau. And that is a community that the plants heavily rely on fire for regrowth and regeneration. So this is something we use on TextWrap. You can find it on our website. This is a wildfire threat for I tried to get all your counties in this map here. Basically, it just shows that the darker colored red is the higher likelihood of a fire happening within 1 year. Doesn't mean that a fire is guaranteed to happen or that it would be necessarily large, just that the chance of it happening are high given the fuels, late fire history and everything. Here, also try to get all your counties in there, is the wildfire intensity. So the darker areas means that the fuels, fire history, topography shows that if a wildfire does occur, the possibility of it getting large with higher flames or moving rapidly is higher in certain areas where you can see the dark areas compared to the yellow areas. And so Wildland Urban Interface, also known as the WUI, that's also part of my title, is the transition from wildland and human development. So as we are spreading out, people are moving away from the high urban areas into the wildland areas. That is the WUI. So that can cause problems for like fire response or make things more complex because now beforehand it was just lots of acres of trees, grasses, shrubs. Now there's actual properties, homes, shelters, everything like that within those areas. And these are some of the WUI types. So the classic, which are structures or neighborhoods, communities leaning right against the wildland areas. Mixed, where the structures are the more rural areas, structures are kind of all over the place. And the occluded, where these communities are completely surrounding a area of forest or wildland areas. So the functional buoy, this is another map. So as you can see, it's a bunch of different colors. So the brown or the darker brown colored areas is burnable land within 75 meters of a structure. The yellow is indirect, so it's more of your urban areas where it's more home to home ignition. So if one house catches on fire, is closer to another house, embers can spread. That's that yellow areas. The peach is the critical fire shed, so it's unpopulated land that are within 2.4 kilometers of a group of structures. And the darker red, not the brown ones, are sources of ember loading. So if a fire happens there, it can produce lots of embers that can go out to structures. And here are some more counties showing those maps. Try to get that way, if whoever is coming from whatever county that you all are either physically there in Kerrville or tuning in virtually, you can also see your areas. And here we have the wildfire occurrence. So this map shows wildfires that were ignited within 2 miles of a community from 2005 to 2023. We have not added 2024's data to this, but it's taking into consideration all types of buoys. And of those, 74% of wildfires occur within 1 mile of a community. And here is a map of our 2024 wildfire season. So all the blue is what your local fire departments have inputted into Fire Connect. So there's a national database system that these fire departments put their fires in, and then our own on the state level. And so all the red dots are where we also went to those fires. And if I go back and forth between these two maps, you can see that a lot of these fires that these fire departments and us are going to are in WUI areas. And so a little bit more zoomed in for wildfire ignitions, trying to go in through all the counties. So these dots are different colored, and these are categorized for the different ignition sources. So blue would be debris burning, green would be equipment use, yellow lightning, and there's other colors that show campfires, smoking, fireworks, power lines, railroads. So I know it's kind of maybe weird since you're all virtually and I'm also virtual, but what colors going through these maps do you see, I guess, kind of the most? You can put it in the chat or say it out loud. It might be a little difficult. I'm virtual, so I've never done this type of presentation virtually before. But there's a lot of greens and blues. And that leads us into our next thing. So burn piles are actually the #1 source of Texas fires. So back in those maps, all that blue, those were burn piles, and heavy equipment use is also another leading factor. So 9 out of 10 wildfires are estimated that are human caused. So while on the maps you saw a lot of lightning as well, those are natural causes. 9 out of 10 of wildfires in Texas are estimated started by humans. So that's dragging your tow chains. If you're a welder, you weld outside, you're by a dry patch of grass, that can start a wildfire. You're letting your grill flames at a barbecue get too high, those embers can start a fire somewhere. Even mowing your lawn, if you hit a rock, it can start a spark. If you're by dry grass, it can start a wildfire. And so going into some fire resistant principles, going into this, I'm not going to tell you all what you necessarily can or can't plant in your yard, how you want to have your landscaping in your yard. That's all up to you. These are just our recommendations and just kind of things you should keep in mind as you're going about, whether you're reconstructing your home or replacing your roof, or you wanted to plant something new, just thoughts that you all should have. So what is fire resistant landscaping? It's the creation or change of vegetation around a home that can prepare your property or even your community if a wildfire occurs. Now, all vegetation is potential fuel for fire since there is no fireproof plant species, but the type, how much of it, where you put it, all plays a critical role in a wildfire preparedness. So here we have the structure ignition zone. If you do try to look this up online, it will come up as like the home ignition zone. It used to be a home ignition zone for a long period of time, but as people started moving into these woody areas more, they started to realize that it's not just homes, but just structures in general, sheds, commercial buildings, anything like that. So the intermediate zone for this is the home itself up to 5 feet away. That's what we determine is the most focused area that you should be paying attention to in preparations for wildfire preparedness. The intermediate zone is 5 to 30 feet, and the extended zone is 30 to 100 feet. So the immediate zone, that's the home itself, and up to 5 feet, it is what we kind of say the most important, or what you all should focus more on, whether you have a lot of acres or just not much acres. The home itself is prone to emperor intrusion, and where you should put most of your focus before spreading outward. So clean your roofs and gutters, adding mesh screens no larger than 1/8 of an inch onto your vents, keeping all flammable materials, propane tanks, firewood piles away from the home itself. Planting low flammability plants and pruning your trees 10 feet from the ground is the national standard. Where I am here in the Valley in South Texas, the trees pretty much only get up to 10 feet high. So the Texas standard or recommendation is 1/3 of the tree should be pruned up from the ground to get rid of those ladder fuels. And the intermediate zone, that's when you start looking into the landscaping areas. So implementing fuel breaks in terms of pathways, driveways, planting your trees farther apart. Again, removing the ladder fuels 1/3 of the ways of the tree and keeping your lawn mowed. The extended zone is 30 feet on. This is where you take into consideration where your trees are. Again, removing those ladder fuels by pruning them 1/3 up away from the bottom, spacing your plants and your shrubs. This is where more people have more shrubbery in their areas, and keeping them away from the trunks of your tall trees, because you want to get rid of those ladder fuels. That's why we're pruning the trees. So you're taking away those brushes, so that way if the brushes catch on fire, if they are tall, or if they're right up against a tree with low hanging branches, the tree itself will catch on fire. So fire resistant landscaping. Again, this is going to go a little bit more into the types of plants you want to plant. Again, nothing is fireproof, just things to consider. So you want something that has low flammability. They're broad, moist leaves, low branching patterns, deciduous, they self-prune, and they're slow growing and healthy. So high flammability plants typically have dense, dry leaves. They're needle-like, they retain dead leaves and branches, and they're fast growing. A couple of examples there. So shrubs, you want to plant shrubs low growing, and avoid planting volatile shrubs near the windows. If you have shrubs, trees, any types of plants by the windows, they can actually crack the windows, especially if it's only a single pane grass. And you want to modify these shrubberies with rock mulch or other vegetation to create a little bit of a break. Mulch. So 2 to 3 foot area around the house should be clear of all mulches, and again, anything flammable. Mulch is composed of large woods, retain moisture longer, so they'll take slower amount of time to ignite, versus the pine straws are highly flammable. So maintenance, irrigation around the house, keeping grasses and ground covers short, pruning and raking all dead leaves, matters, raking leaves, pine straws, and replacing dead plants. Also, here's some photo examples. So you want to remove your limbs and damaged trees, pruning your branches, watering plants to maintain health. And then here in the Valley in South Texas, everything's kind of flat. But I know in the hill country, the terrain, you can get pretty steep. So you also want to consider, if you're going to be planting more trees, or you're thinking of removing certain trees, keeping more distance away from them, because those crown fires can actually spread faster when you're on steep terrain. So fuel arrangement and continuity. So surface fires, that's where you have, everything's low to the ground. If there's a lot of fuels, a lot of grass patches right next to each other, it's going to continue horizontally. Vertical arrangement, that's what we consider those ladder fuels. So you'll see on the bottom, all the brushes, smaller trees growing up towards the larger trees, they will continue to, if they catch on fire, will continue up all the way to the crowns. So here's an example. You want to isolate your flower beds, my bad. If you can see closely on this photo, you can see there's like rock little patches around these trees and plant areas. This is to break that continuity. So if a fire does break out, you want to stop it in its track and not add more fuel for it to continue. creating fuel breaks and fire-resistant plants. So non-combustible materials for walkways, little borders, creating foundation fuel breaks, 18 to 24 inch of gravel along edge of home's foundation. So that's what you'll see here in this bottom photo. And I actually did not add a photo. I really should find it. But I was on a fire just last month out in Corpus Christi and doing the home assessments after the fact. One of the homes that had some radiant heat damage actually was not destroyed, did not catch fire because there was an 18-inch cement like block all around the edge of the fire. And the grass up to that point was completely burned. So here's some more fuels mitigation, strategically reducing vegetative fuels in a way that serves to reduce fire intensity. So when you say we want things low to the ground, we want those flames to stay smaller, lower, because sometimes they put themselves out. So as you can see here in these grassy areas, the flames just stop. There's not necessarily lots of rock or brick or pathway there, but sometimes the flames are just so low. If the winds are not there, the temperatures might not be so high, they can actually kill themselves off. And it also allows for first responders to protect these homes. So if this whole areas, these greenery areas, these firefighters are able to get to this spot to stop the fire as well, and they're able to defend your home. So here's a couple of photos of fuels mitigation, before and after photos, just some project work, some other properties all across the state that do these kinds of things. So show you some examples. Here's a shaded fuel break. So as you can see, these trees are either pruned or their branches are a little more higher, and everything on the bottom is low to the ground. Another before and after. Here's another before and after. Another fuel break. And then you all heard me mention like radiant heat. So homes and structures are lost through three methods: radiant heat, embers, and flame impingement. Radiant heat is when the flames are not directly touching the structure, but they may be so large that there's so much heat that the sides of the homes are starting to basically kind of melt off. Embers can be extremely small specks of fire, basically the size of dust, that can fly up to 2 miles away and start a fire somewhere else. And then flame impingement is when the flames are directly touching the fire or the structure. So ember intrusion mitigation. So embers are very dangerous and actually the #1 cause of home loss in a wildfire. Most homes lost in a wildfire are not actually directly in the path of the fire or are not touched by the flames, but they are touched by embers. So stuff to consider, a little checklist to look over. If you have chimneys, you have a certain roof construction, lots of eaves, make sure there's no roof debris, vents are covered, rain gutters are cleaned out, windows double paned, looking at your landscaping, little nannies and crooks. And here is an example of a vulnerable site. And another one, you can see debris on top of the roof. And gutters. So cleaning out your gutters, making sure it's clean so no embers can intrude. And so I wanted to show you all this, just like a little example. If you can see here along this fence, looks like there's a little bit of a fire break. So these flames are not necessarily coming all the way through. And you can see a firefighter in this neighboring yard through the fence, putting out a fire that started right here. So if there is a fuel break, it's providing, you're increasing your chances of your home not being lost, but you're also allowing first responders, the firefighters, to get there. So if an ember comes through or a slow flaming front is coming through, they're able to get there safely and stop it and protect your home. And here are some examples of some homes saved. As you can see here, the black, this is where the fire came through and stopped. Here as well, this gravel rock pathway, driveway, fire was coming down and stopped because there were no more fuels for its feed. Again, here with the driveway. And here's another example. Here is another example. And so wanted to also speak to you guys about Firewise USA. I know there are a lot of Firewise communities up in the Austin, West Austin, North San Antonio areas. So FireWise program, it teaches people how to adapt to living with wildfire and encourages neighbors to work together to take action to prevent losses. So this is a community-oriented program. If you all are interested in your community becoming a FireWise community, you must create a written risk assessment as like the first step to becoming a FireWise USA site, and you must form your own board, a committee. We recommend having multiple people, because if it's just one person taking over, if they move or anything like that, no one else is able to take it over. We want this to continue long term and create an action plan. So you recommended home ignition zone projects, educational activities, outreach efforts. All communities are required to have one outreach event, whether it be a cleanup day, something on social media, educating the public and your community on wildfire preparedness. And there is no, when you go on the site, it'll tell you a monetary dollar amount that should be invested into the community. That is actually the equivalent to 1 volunteer hour per dwelling. So anything for wildfire preparedness, so cleaning your gutters, mowing your lawn, everyone in the community typically does at least 1 hour of, say, mowing your lawn or cleaning your gutters per year. You've already met that requirement. And so here is a FireWise success story out in Llano County. So I was not working for Texas A&M Forest Service during this, but I was told that a neighboring community that was not FireWise did have some homes lost, but this FireWise community specifically did not. And so wildfire preparedness. So having a wildfire action plan with 2 or more evacuation routes. So if one evacuation route you already have that you take more frequently has a lot of smoke you're not able to see, you should always have a backup plan just in case. Packing an evacuation go kit that's you're easily able to put together, and being aware of wildfire potentials on the news, signing up for emergency notification alerts. Fire departments will also share whenever there's a burn ban in your area and all that. And ready, set, go. So you want to gather all your emergency supplies in a safe place with a planned escape routes, and ensure your family knows the plan. Everyone who's living with you, anyone visiting, if there's higher fire potential, you always want to be prepared. Getting ready, keeping up to date with the local media, fire departments, and public safety, and go. If a wildfire is coming your way, it's always best to evacuate early, even if it's not a mandatory evacuation. And so this is what you should have in your go kit at least. People and pet supplies up to 72 hours, any prescriptions for yourselves, for your pets, all your papers, licenses, socials, birth certificates, personal needs, cash along with your cards, extra batteries, extra clothes, priceless items. So if you have any photo books or anything, if you have kids and they have something, a sentimental stuffed animal or toy, that'll typically keep them calm during an evacuation. And so overall, just 5 tips for wildfire risk reduction: creating a go kit and evacuation plan, avoiding outdoor activities that may cause a spark, especially during a burn ban, property accessible to first responders, and making sure all your homes are visible, especially if you live in a more rural area. You want to make sure that these first responders can find your homes, fire resistant landscaping, and fire resistant home construction. And so I know I spoke about a lot. If you all have any other questions, you can either ask me right now, send me an email, call me. I'm always welcome to put on one of these again for you guys. Do you have any questions?
And we have time for questions. I can take the microphone around. Abbie, if you'll stop the share and so that we can see you, and if you want to answer questions.
Yes.
While you're thinking of the question real quick, by the way, in your little bag, there is a FireWise USA summary of things you could do
In your bags. Does anyone have any questions offhand? I mean, here you've got an expert that can answer most of what you would like to know.
Are your slides available for everybody?
I do not have them available for everyone. Is there specific information that you were looking for? Most of it can be found like online, either on our website or just simple Google. Other organizations will also have that.
I will email you.
What do you mean? There, I see your
Yep.
question in chat. Covering your vents. Yes, so covering your vents, metal mesh screens. So ember intrusions, they can get really small. So they can actually go in through your vents. And so I know I've seen videos, I've never personally, I've been with the agency for less than a year. I'm going into my first fire season. So I've witnessed not as much as other people in my agency. So this is all things that they've told me, all research I've done. There's actual videos online that I found of firefighters going through homes that have been evacuated, making sure everyone's gone through, and an ember has actually gone in through the vent and their attic caught on fire. And the firefighters didn't notice until they basically were coming back. So that's really why you want to have all your vents covered with a metal mesh screen with holes no bigger than 1/8 of an inch to keep those embers out.
There's a couple of people asking for a way to contact you, or the
Yes.
website or your address.
I can I'll put my contact in the chat. I don't know if that will be easier.
Yes,
So
that
I'll
might
put
be
my
easier.
email,
Right
and
there, can
then-
everybody see that? It says Abbie.Tijerina. Now, what I can do is if you'd like, I mean, I've been contacting her all week, so I can send that information or have it on the front page.
Yes, I also put our agency's website on there as well. So there you'll be able to find more details about any questions that you may have.
In other words, I will help you out. This is a very important topic. If we have it on, say, the front page of the website, that would help. The other thing is, Deb and I were looking at some sites, and we found one called Fire Mitigation, which has just about everything you could possibly think of on it. It's very extremely detailed, and we could easily put a link on there as well. Would that be helpful to people? Okay. We have a couple other questions, I believe.
Abbie, is there any kind of risk assessment of fire? To like a visit to properties or something like that? Is that something that is offered or not?
So typically, for us, for Texas A&M Forest Service, we do risk assessments to communities, typically fire-wise communities. I'm just getting certified through our agency to do those assessments. So far, I've only ever done them with it. Some local departments do have trained personnel that they're able to go and check those, make those assessments themselves. If you have a certain community, basically it has to be a community that we do those assessments with, but if you want to send me an email, we can go ahead and try to get that process started. It's more just on a community level. And it can also take some time. We don't have a lot of personnel in our agency that can do it kind of on demand.
A further question. You provided some information on specific plants. I think you had lantana being a good plant to be fire resistant, and the hollies were bad plants. Can you provide, or can you direct us to a site that gives greater information and examples of plants? Since we have been through 3 fires within the last 3 years, it's kind of important to us. We found stuff, for instance, that rosemary, you know, oily type plants, etc. But I think that would be helpful to share for the community.
Yes. So I don't have an actual list. Everything can be found online. And also, if you go to any of your garden centers in your areas, there also will be able to lead you into the direction that plants that are slower growing, more moist, and all of that. It's more just meeting those criteria versus that one specific plant that you want to look for, and spacing them out and keeping them maintained. So you can have a plant that might not be as moist, but if they're more spread out, you're keeping them trimmed, you're making sure they're growing not too fast and everything, you're watering them appropriately, and that will still be more beneficial than if you had a super moist plant, but you weren't taking care of it and it ended up drying out or dying. That's a drier fuel that can catch fire easily. Did that help?
The compromises one is forced to make. And I have as an example, if you have a 250-year-old oak tree right next to your house, and you can extend it to all sorts of similar situations. So you cut down the oak tree, or you let your house burn?
That's where it's up to like the properties owner. So there are lots of, especially out in the San Antonio, Austin area, where I'm not from, it's just also what I've just been told. There's a lot of older, bigger trees. So just making sure at that end your roofs are cleaned off. So you're just paying more attention. If the leaves are, you see a lot of leaves falling on your roofs, you're cleaning off your roof rather than completely cutting down the trees. Because the trees are good for the environment, they're good for shade and everything like that, especially Texas heat. So it's just taking those extra precautions. You don't have to necessarily cut down all your trees, completely space them out, plant new smaller ones. Whatever you do have, just maintaining them more frequently, it'll still be fine.
And Abbie, what I think I heard you say and what I've read is that on some trees, like a big old oak tree, the trunk is not going to burn very easily. But if you have a lot of stuff underneath it that's going to catch fire and then go up to the top of the tree, that would be what you want to trim out, right? In other words,
Yes, that's why we recommend pruning a third of the way as possible and keeping the smaller trees and brushes away from the trunks. Because the trunks, especially the thicker trees, older trees that are a lot bigger, they take longer to catch fire. So if those surface fuels are smaller and aren't as hot, the trees won't catch fire, the leaves won't, and especially if they're not so tall, the leaves won't catch fire, which will, and then turn the whole tree on fire.
Does anyone else have something for Abbie? Okay, whoops, okay.
Abbie, we talked before about the grants that were available to help people clear their land. Have those all expired now, or is that something you do every year?
I believe they're done every year. Right now, are you talking about the mechanical fuel grant that's currently open? I know I spoke with someone else, and several people in Kerr County have reached out to me about that. So the mechanical fuel reduction grant, it basically it kind of refunds you money that you spent on contracting for trimming, mulching, pruning your trees. All of that is through contract. So Texas A&M Forest Service will reimburse those funds to you. Let me see if I can, for sure, the website, get that link to you all if you'll want to look at that yourselves. It will be closing at the end of the month, if that is something you all were looking for. And then on our website, there is also a grant finder. So you'll be able to go to your specific city or county and it'll tell you what grants are available at a certain time during the year.
Thank you. Does anyone else have something for Abbie? If not, I'd like to thank Abbie very much.
I do have another question here in the chat, real quick. Balancing.
Oh, there's a couple of Zoom questions, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. How do you balance trimming and removing debris? So that's up to the property owners. I know I've seen, especially coming up, there is a national community wildfire preparedness day where a lot of communities across the whole nation are getting together and basically doing a big cleanup day. So that's when they're trimming, putting all their debris in a pile, and the city or community leaders are actually taking those debris out. I know some areas, certain cities have a weekly debris pickup if you have it on the certain part of your properties. I'm not sure about y'all's area. You would have to look at that with your cities and counties department. And then, yes.
The second half of that question was, how do you, I put it in 2 sentences, but how do you balance removing the debris with using some of those debris to kind of create swales and help with water saving and stuff?
Yeah, so again, that's why it's just a recommendation, things to consider when it's on your property. You take into account droughts, the ecology part of everything, and fire protection. And that's where you determine on your own kind of where you want things placed. So just considerations to make where you're having plantings done, because having say when you're saying rake your leaves, because especially dry leaves, those can also be really good ecology wise. So that's why you have to take into account what you want. A lot of people that I've come in contact talking about this with typically meet in the middle where they keep everything. Again, you want to protect your home. So keeping everything away from the home itself and up to 5 feet and out is basically the biggest recommendation. Were those all the questions?
I think so. Again, I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight, and we wish you keep safe.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, our second speaker has, well, he'll tell you himself. Billy, if you'll come up and talk about your experience.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Well, first of all, I never thought that I would be up here speaking about this subject. And I hope that you are never in the same situation where you have the knowledge and the experience that Patti and I had during the Crabapple Fire. I want to give credit to Patti for a lot of the photos that you're going to see that we took. They were on the front page of the second section of the Fredericksburg Standard. Didn't want to be, get our names in the paper for that reason either. So, but anyway, Patti has helped with ideas and, like I said, the photos for this talk. As the other speaker was discussing these issues, I was making notes, so my talk may be a little disjointed. One of the first notes I wrote down is that regardless of what you think, the fire department is not going to be able to save everybody, and they're not going to be able to save everybody's property. The Crabapple Fire covered almost 10,000 acres. I believe 9 or 10 residences were lost, numerous outbuildings, a huge amount of equipment, farm equipment, all types of losses that occurred. The primary function of the fire department, at least from my experience in seeing what occurred, is to save life. So they go around and they go down private roads to warn residents to evacuate in a fire like this. So their primary function is to save life. Secondary is to save property. And they're not going to be able to come out to your house in the country and sit there with a fire truck to put out fires. There's just not that much equipment, not that much availability, not that much manpower. So you should take heed in all the things that you've seen so far as to how to protect your property yourself, because that's the primary way that you can get through a fire. The topic of my talk, the way I've entitled it, is Beware the Ides of March. This fire occurred on March the 15th. That's the day that Caesar was assassinated. And I just, when I started thinking about this talk, I said, well, what does that really mean, beware the Ides of March? Because Caesar's already dead, Nobody's going to come and kill us on the Ides of March. But the definition, if you look it up, says something to the effect that the Ides of March are associated with misfortune and doom. So that's the nature of this talk, is to hopefully help you not be the subject of misfortune and doom. The other thought that occurred to me while we were listening to this, and the Crabapple Fire, of course, was primarily a rural fire, but you're just as susceptible in town to all of these events that we've talked about, or that we'll talk about, even though you're in a town or a city, because your neighbor's house could catch on fire. A toaster goes bad, something happens that causes their house to catch fire. That puts your house immediately next door in the direct line of fire, so to speak. So you still, all of these issues that we talk about are just as important if you live in town. Because historically, more fires probably occur in towns and cities than they do out in the countryside to affect that many people. And as you've seen out in California, you've got whole towns and cities that have completely burned because of the fires out there. The situation that occurred on March the 15th was similar to what you have read about in California, because the winds were blowing 45 miles an hour in the Crabapple Fire. And you go outside and, you know, you feel like you're in a gale or a windstorm, which is what we were. Just the connection of all those conditions made it a perfect storm, so to speak. The drought situation, the spark that set it off, which, by the way, nobody's found out what set it off, or at least nobody's admitted it. All those conditions were perfect for this fire to occur with the high wind. The main thing that, the first thing that I would say in preparing for a fire is, like you've seen, have a plan. What are you going to do if a fire occurs and you're not there with your whole family? They're in different parts of the house. They're in different parts of the city or the country. You need a place to meet up after that fire, whether it's a church or a school or a bar, anywhere that you can go if you lose contact with your family. Secondly, have a go bag. Like she indicated, the things that you want to put in a go bag are like your birth certificates, your passports, money, cash, prescriptions. We have a diabetic cat, and so insulin would be important for the cat. You're not able to think about all those things usually in the moment that you're going to need a go bag. So you might want to get all your important papers, all those things that I've mentioned. If you own a gun, you might want to put a gun in there. You never know what's going to happen in a situation in these conditions. After this fire, the county law enforcement were out on all the different roads going into and out of this fire area to protect the area from looters. So you wouldn't think that's going to happen in the hill country, but the populace that we have and the nice people that we have living in the hill country, but you never know. So you may want to have something for personal protection. And last of all, you may want to take your favorite bottle of whiskey or wine with you. Because that night, I didn't have that in my go bag, and I had to go get provisions like food and things like that, where we went and stayed with some friends of ours that had a friend with a vacant house, and we all went there. But we didn't have any food, we didn't have any wine, and you know, you need those provisions. So whatever you think's important, put in that go bag and know where it is, so that you're not frantically looking around. Well, did I hide it under that bed in the bedroom, or did I put it out in the shop, or whatever? Know where it is. Be prepared to go fast. Pull up the first slide for me, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, let's go ahead and go through these at this point. This is our property before the fire. And you can just go ahead and flip through. A lot of deer on our place, a lot of high grass. The little blue stem at our place was 4 feet high. Patti was just in that picture with big blue stem that's probably 6.5 feet tall. So a lot of oaks, a lot of trees on our property. That's what it looked like before. Give me the next slide, Phil. Go back. That one, yeah. I was sitting on the couch at about 12:30 on that day, and I think we had just eaten lunch, and we were just kind of hanging around the house. Patti comes in off the back porch and said, "There's a fire out here." And I'm thinking, well, it's a little grass fire over here, or maybe the barbecue pit caught fire, I don't know. I walk out and that's what we see. That is my neighbor's house. The fire was coming from the other side of his house, and that's the first thing we see. That photo was probably taken when the fire was at least a mile away. That's how big the fire was. So we had about an hour before we had to evacuate, and we had a chance to get some things off the property. Throw the stuff in the go bag in. I have a little safe, a fireproof safe that's in my shop or office. And a lot of these materials, the important documents I have in that safe, I just took the whole safe and put it in the back of my pickup truck. And then we started gathering clothes and getting things together to go. I fortunately had the opportunity to move my tractor, our Polaris, both of those up to Highway 16, which is about half a mile from where our house is, down a private road. It ended up being exactly where the fire crossed Highway 16. We were fortunate enough though, however, that the fire was blowing so fast and coming so hard that it blew all the way over Highway 16 and all the way over my tractor and the Polaris, and started up on the other side of 16, about 20 yards on the other side of the road. So we were very fortunate that that occurred. The Highway 16 was in effect kind of a fire break, things right on the other side of 16, but not for the other 5,000 acres that burned after it jumped 16. One of the, and I don't know how this occurred, but just it hit me that what do I need to save or protect in this hour that I've got before I have to evacuate? Where the electricity comes into our property through overhead lines, we have our electric pole where all the service comes in. You've got your boxes out there. That's where we also have a propane tank of 250 gallons and a generator that we got from Generac after we had the ice storm. So all those three items were in the same area, and you'll see a photo of that later on. Go ahead, Phil, and hit some more. Next slide. Okay, this is good. This is what the photo Patti took, the one of the house right before we left. The one that says we need to go. That's how close the fire was at that time. We could actually see flames at that point. And as we were driving out of the driveway in the field or pasture right across our house, from our house that's on our property, you could see the fire actually jumping. Every 50 yards, another ember or spark would catch the fire, start it, and then it would just continue on. And it was growing, it was going faster than you could drive a truck down the road. So when it's time to go, you need to get out. So right before we did get out, I had the fortunate foresight to go and take a hose out that runs out of our pump house for our well, and hook it up to a sprinkler, an oscillating sprinkler, and I put it on the generator, the propane tank, and the electric service pole. And where that water line stopped, where the water was going, that's where the fire stopped. And we sweated it all night long about whether that propane tank was going to blow up. And if it had, we would have been in a lot worse shape. As it was, we had 18 of our 20 acres burned. The 2 acres right around the house did not burn. Around the house, the shop, the well house, and the cabin that we have. And I credit that again to Patti for mowing the grass, short mowing, 3 inches to 4 inches, that 2 acres all around those buildings, because that's where the fire stopped. You can see it. So anyway, if there's something you can protect with a sprinkler or a sprinkler system, and if you have the time, get it going. If you have a generator, make sure that that's hooked up. Because CTEC, as soon as they know that a fire is coming, they turn the electricity off, so that it doesn't go ahead and spark off other fires. If their poles go down, they don't have live electric lines starting other fires. So you have to, again, protect yourself by getting a generator possibly for that purpose. All the things that she mentioned about what you can do before, we again, we have a gravel road that comes in, private road that comes into our house that kind of circles about half of the buildings that we have on the property. We xeriscape around the house, so we've got that line of about 8 feet of rock before you get to the house, so that will protect the house. Fortunately, it didn't get up that far to our house because Patti had short mowed around the property, and that grass did not catch on fire. There were a couple of little spots that you could tell where it had burned by embers blowing in, but they didn't get, the grass was not high enough to accelerate the fire by having that much fuel on the ground. Let's see. The way we typically have always landscaped our properties, especially in the city, is you start with high bushes and trees right next to the house. You go out in your bed, you've got smaller bedding plants, and you've got little shrubs, you've got little bushes, and then you start your lawn. Well, everything they tell you is opposite of that for fire protection. You want nothing against the house for the distances that she was talking about. Then you start with your small plants. Then you go with your bushes as you get further away from the house. Then you finally get to your trees. And all that's counterintuitive to what we've always grown up with, most of us. So another thing that's kind of counterintuitive to the TMN program is we've been taught to let everything grow, let the understory grow, so the birds can have different sections of places to nest. And you've got short plants out there, you've got medium plants, and you got trees. Well, what the fire people are telling you, you need to leg everything up for about 10 feet so there's no fuel there to catch everything on fire. That's just a personal choice as to what you want to do with your property. But just keep those things in mind when you're preparing your property for fire-wise protection. Let's see. There's you can go on and get on a link or a service for emergency notification through your county, at least in Gillespie and probably all counties, emergency notification of things bad happening, and they will get in touch with you by phone or email. So you can call or go on the web, at least in Gillespie County, the county website, and they've got that service available to sign, that where you can sign up for that. So that's one thing you might want to do. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure, if you're on in the rural countryside, open your gates. So if you have stock, cows, goats, sheep, they can get out. And so the fire people can get in without breaking down your gates or breaking down your fences. So go out there, open the gate, make sure it can stay open for the duration. We left ours open for about 6 days because this fire lasted about 5 or 6 days as an active fire. Even in places that had completely burned, like our 18 acres, I was putting out spot fires for the next 4 days. I've got Patti bought me actually it's a watering tank that goes on the back of our Polaris. It's 55 gallons. And I went around filling that thing up and putting out spot fires that kept on coming back, even though the fire had already burned everything we could see that would burn. So leave your gates open. We didn't mow around the gate controller on our gate, and our gate controller was affected by the fire, burned all the wiring that went to the controller. So you may want to short mow around the gate controller at the entrance of your property. Even though we did get out some equipment up to Highway 16, I had to leave our Kubota 2-man ATV. I left it on the gravel road that was right by the house, and it made it through the fire. The fire stopped when it hit the gravel of the gravel road, and this vehicle was parked 2 feet away from where the fire stopped, but it did not get any damage. So one thing you might want to do if you don't have time to get your equipment out into a roadway or something is to park it at the end of your driveway, not close to the house, because if it does catch fire, it's got gasoline in it or diesel, and that could be another fire source. So park it far enough away from the house or other buildings in case it does catch on fire. But that would be a quick way to maybe save some of your equipment. Right before you leave the house, turn off your air conditioner, because it's going to be sucking in that smoke into your house. We didn't turn ours off, and yeah, there's a picture of that. This is an after photo of the burn on the property. Beforehand, all that was green live oaks with agarita, tall grasses, beautiful place. These are all after photos. Close the flue to your chimney. You don't want sparks coming down your chimney and lighting any firewood that you've got in your fireplace. In this photo, this is after the fire, of course. Those 2 standing trees in the foreground are where we had stacked probably a cord of wood, again, that I cut up from the ice storm for firewood. But that was just I wasn't there to see it, but I mean, that went up apparently, like a bunch of matches, and all that ash, that's just ash from that amount of wood that burned up in that area. Next slide, Phil. Okay. Again, this is just another area of the property that, if you can imagine, like 4 and 5 foot grass in that area, and green. Those look like post oaks. No, actually, those are live oaks because there's still leaves on the trees. All the leaves on the live oak trees desiccated or dried out from the heat from the fire. We didn't have any canopy of the trees catch fire, but every live oak lost every leaf after the fire, unless it was up about 50 feet at the top of the tree. This is Patti's riding lawnmower. It was a nice piece of equipment at one time, but that was parked over there where, we have all of our heavy equipment parked, and that's what was left. Let's see. Okay. That the slide on the right is a clean air filter from our house that would have been in about that shape about a week before the fire, because I had changed them out. And the one that you see on the top is one of the air filters from the air conditioner inside the house 2 days after the fire. So that much smoke and ash that's just fine can get in your house, even though our house was built 5 years ago and it was airtight, we thought. So we had to run the air conditioner and filters for several days and weeks afterwards to clean out all that coming through. Now, we also had the ductwork come in and be cleaned. A cleaning service came in and wiped down everything, cleaned the coils on the air conditioner. So because the ash and it gets everywhere. This is just an area, again, showing in the foreground would be our front yard. Across the gravel road, you can see the burned area on the left did not come into the yard because it was short mowed again. The area to the right had that barrier of rock, and it was also short mowed because that's a kind of little prairie area that Patti's planted a lot of seeds in. But again, short grass in that area, plus a stone barrier that prevented the fire from going through there. That's just another view across the road of what burned on the pasture across from the house and what didn't burn in the foreground that was short mowed. This is the propane tank and the generator I was telling you about. You can see how close the fire got to that area. Everything in the background, of course, burned. The next slide, Phil. This is things to do after the fire, which I should have done before the fire. But I made a caliche pad all the way around everything that was important over there, and then put river rock on top of that. And I'll have to, keep the grass from growing up in there, but that, should be enough to protect it in case we have another fire. After the fire, I went around and I just kind of looked to see, well, what should I have done that I didn't do? Off the shop that we have out there, we have a shed. We've got a lot of stuff underneath the shed, a lot of flammable stuff underneath the shed. But, the wind out in the country blows leaves up underneath the shed. They get close right at the base of the shed. And so I go back and I'm going, well, if a spark got in here, the whole shed would have gone up, but it didn't. So we were fortunate in that. But I've since taken a leaf blower and gotten all that away from the base of the shed. If you have beds with leaves in them, pine straw, even bark, I would say get that away from the base of your building, because all that can catch fire and then go straight up the side of the building. Let's go to the next slide, Phil. Okay, all right.
Oh, no, it's gonna be before the same one.
One thing I might mention real quickly is Billy and I were talking about it, but he just happens to be the land management assistant, program assistant, which as the land recovers, he'll be he has the expertise to see what comes back, what he can recommend as far as plants, what didn't burn, those sorts of things like that. So if there is a silver lining at all in here, that's one of them right there. I also got 2 other emails from people who lost property in this, yes, right there, this fire. Do you want to say anything offhand, or we?
Not all. It's there.
Now try it now.
Hello?
No, mine's not working.
It's not working.
Okay.
Can
Mine's
you hear me
working.
now?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. 75 acres, the Crabapple Fire. I'm a little still emotional about it. I know Billy and those guys are too. Anyway, the fire started, we live on Crabapple.
And the fire started, what, about a quarter of a mile from us. We could see where it started. The first responders came, we're up on top of the hill, Billy, remember that? And we could see it as it started. Our neighbor actually drove past the fire as it started. It was the neighbor down there from San Antonio. He had been clearing all the land. There were at least 25, what size? Big slash piles that had been there, because I pick up trash along there, had been there for 3 or 4 months. And they're dry. Those are the 25 I could see. He has 100 acres. No telling how many there were. That fire started right along there somewhere. And that's the reason, Billy, you guys could see the flames. It just had an amazing amount of fuel. And like you said, the winds were blowing. So anyway, the fire took off. The first responders were amazing. It's the second time they've saved our house. First time they've saved yours. And we have a pond. Billy and I talked about this. He goes, well, I don't know about, damming up the creeks. And I said, yeah, but it saved us from a fire. It saved us from this fire, as did our other neighbor's pond. And I will say that, they say it's not going to happen again, but it can. So the things Billy's talking about, if you can do them, do them. Be ahead of the game. The hope part of it is we're 2.5 years out of the first big sky fire. We have grass underneath nearly all those trees, except for where the cedar, and we didn't seed anything. The other thing I would suggest, Billy, to go through, and you're going to see your post oaks and your live oaks are going to start putting up. Go ahead and build some exclosures. Use your branches. Keep the deer out of those, because 2.5 years later, we have, what did we see? We have some 6-foot live oaks. Not big round, but good size. The other thing that's going to come up that's beautiful is your flame leaf sumac. They love fire. So that's going to come up everywhere. You're not going to have a lot of wildlife around, but they do come back. Pigs came back first, I will say. But I just watching, we had the airplanes dropping the fire retardant. That's what saved our house in both instances. The other thing, if you have acreage and you've got some hills, the fire department will come through and do really wide fire breaks. We now have on our acreage, we're going to have some hellacious hiking trails because it's all through there. But you have to go back and do your soil conservation. You've got to stop that erosion. So you're going to have a lot of downed wood, cut them up, put them along those, stop, don't lose your soil off the top of your hills or along the sides. Alan, do you have anything to add?
Did any of your agarita come back? Yeah, most of at least the arborists that we've had out said the agarita, of course, it burned to the ground, and their opinion is it's not going to come back if it's burned that badly. And of course, all the cedar, it burns, it's flammable, it's like a torch, so that won't normally come back. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I think, both you and the last from TBWD, the Extension Service, really emphasized ladder fuel. And for those of us who are north of town, we got hit with that winter storm Uri, which dropped a lot of oak limbs on the ground, cedar limbs. I've done pretty well clearing that up, but not enough. And between the cedar and that fuel on the ground, it was just too much fuel load. And the bad thing about that is, if this had just been a grass fire, because it's happened to a neighbor of us just, half a mile north of us, just primarily grasses, his oaks are fine. That fire went through so quickly. Because when you have the cedar and the ladder fuel, it just clobbers the trees and it's just, I mean, few of ours is.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, after the ice storm Uri, I had cleaned up 90% of our property and pushed all those branches and down trees into burn piles and burned 18 burn piles, probably 20 by 20 feet. And so we did not have as much fuel on the ground as some of our neighbors. And now you can see some of our trees coming back, but on the neighbor's place, out of like maybe 500 trees that we can see, there's maybe 5 or 6 coming back because of all the fuel that was on the ground.
Yeah.
Patty,
Can everybody hear me? I'm really loud. Oh, they can't hear me on that.
on Zoom.
Well, all I wanted to say is, as Billy said, we did clean up about 90%. However, there is a section in the northwest corner that we did not clean. And-
Abby, they can't hear you on Zoom.
Oh, okay.
We have 75 people on Zoom.
I was saying that Billy mentioned that about 90% of our property we did clean up after Ice Storm Uri. However, we had a little section of our property, it was all live oaks, and where we had a lot of the branches and limbs and everything that were down, they were still down, and there was a big mott of oaks. And where all of that caught on fire, those are completely gone. I mean, they are just burned to a crisp. And it was because of that intense amount of fuel that was there. And, you know, we kept saying we're going to go back up there and clean that area out, and we never did. It's just, you know, so many things going on, and we wish we had, because it did. That's just going to be empty up there. I mean, we're gonna have to do some restoration, plant trees, or get a few goats maybe later. No, but we do plan on, we are gonna have to do some restoration up in that area for sure. But we have noticed the green grass coming back, especially after some of the recent rains that we've had. And so we're just thankful we're alive and our house is fine, and we have a, you know, roof over our heads. And well, you know, Billy laughs at me sometimes when I say divine intervention, but that you have to realize the fire was coming from the north, headed right toward us, and then the winds changed. The winds actually changed into a westerly direction when it got really close, and it was going 45 miles an hour, and it just kind of swirled, and it swirled around our house. And right across the road, you saw that picture of where our yard looked fine. It looked fine. And then just right across that little dirt, red granite road, there was all burned. With 45-mile-an-hour winds, in the way that wind was whipping around, I just can't help but think there was a little divine intervention there, because a spark can travel for a half a mile. A mile to 2 miles, well, there you go. And here we are, untouched, 2 acres, completely untouched, and everything else catches on fire. Thank you, Lord.
And that was kind of like the last part of my talk was, even though, like you said, after the fire, things come back. The grasses within 3 weeks were all popping up. Now it's 6 weeks later, and they're starting to grow, and you can tell that all the grasses are going to come back. The trees, a lot of those are starting to come back. The arborist that we've talked to said you really need to wait about 3 to 6 months before you start cutting down questionable trees that you're not sure of. Some of them are obviously like matchsticks, and they're obviously dead, but there's a lot of things that may come back, as you've said, and so we're looking forward to that. And that other picture that you had up there of me was that, you know, like what just happened That was after 4 days of going around and putting out those spot fires that I was talking about. It was a selfie.
Billy, I have one more.
Yeah.
I have a funny story. So about an hour into the fire, and we have, I don't know how many firefighters, and our whole front yard was full of equipment stuff because they were watching it from there and radioing. They'd already called in for the air support. But anyway, some guy runs up to us. We co-own a bulldozer with our neighbor. And they said, can we use your bulldozer? We said, absolutely. And they take off. And about 3 days later, Alan goes, where's the bulldozer? So we start talking to Stanley. We start talking to, everybody. Nobody's seen the bulldozer. So finally, who did you talk to? A&M? The dispatch guy, he goes, let me put out an APB. We said, I don't know how much fuel was in it. Couldn't have gotten that far. Well, somebody finds it about 3 miles down the LCRA easement. Fine, hadn't burned up. And so that was our good story. We found it.
Well, there are good stories, out there. And I guess, like Patti said, the best story is we're alive. And secondly, all of our structures were intact, even though we lost the other 18 acres. But, it will come back. It may take time, but it'll be there, and we'll be there to help it. So, any questions that anybody has? Yes, ma'am.
I have a lot of.
He's going to give you a mic.
I have quite a bit of experience with fire from living, mostly when I lived in Idaho and Montana. And a few things I wanted to say was just some things that hadn't been mentioned was, and I'm getting a little PTSD, I'm sorry. But anyway, I had a friend and he just parked on some grass in the side of the road and started 10,000 acre fire.
Right. It doesn't
Lots
take
of
much.
questions. He was questioned for a couple hours before they decided not to charge him for the cost of the fire.
Right.
So, another was one time I had been burning brush on my property for 20 years. And then one time I had a fire and then 2 days later, there was a spark in a tree trunk that started a fire 2 days later. And I had taken a nap and woke up to see it 15 feet away from my house. And I got the hose out there and I got that fire out as the fire chief was coming up my driveway. And the whole fire, the whole fire department was there trying to put it out and stuff. And I had never had that much respect for how dead out they got that fire. I had been doing fires for 20 years and had never taken that much care to put my fire out dead cold. So that's something. Another time, one time we had a fire in the next valley over. And we lived on a property that there was a 20 mile road up to a resort area, resort town. And it was the only road out of there. And so I didn't trust that everybody could get out of that road at once, And so, and when they had that fire in the next valley over, there was a lot of confusion. The sheriff wasn't very used to having fires, and so it was extremely unclear whether we were supposed to evacuate or not. And so I thought, well, we're going to evacuate, even before it got really, really close, because it was in the next valley. So we had 3 vehicles, and the first time I evacuated, we took so much stuff because we had some time, so we wanted to get our third vehicle out of there and we took so much stuff. And then the next time we had a fire in the other valley over, we were much more experienced and we knew not to take so much stuff, which was great because sometimes you'll need a go bag and go get right out, but sometimes you'll have more time. And so it's good to have a list of what would you take if you had more time and stuff. Another thing was one friend lost their home just from keeping their firewood against their house. I know when you evacuate, you're supposed to leave a light on so that firefighters can find your house. Let's see. And I don't know. That's all. But
Thank you for your comments. I will say, I guess in closing, that the firefighters were awesome. Those guys are out there volunteering. Most of these guys are volunteer fire workers. They're out there. We had units from all the local places, but we also had units over there from Houston, Abilene, Washington State, Oregon State, all over the place. People came to help because, like I said, the fire lasted actively for 5 or 6 days. And so there were units there from everywhere helping out. And so we've got to really appreciate what they do and what they're ready to do to help us out.
Okay, we just noticed it's we're 15 minutes after here. We have time, in other meetings if you want to talk about things like that. But I appreciate everybody sticking around. I appreciate everybody coming tonight. I hope that this was informative to you. And next month, we're going to talk about exact opposite, water. Okay. Take care. Be safe driving home.